In this video, you will learn the difference between a food allergy and a food sensitivity. Enjoy. A food allergy generally happens quite rapidly within a few minutes to a few hours of coming into contact with the food allergen. And the signs and symptoms are hives, itching, swelling, and in extreme cases, you may get anaphylaxis where the throat swells up, and that is a medical emergency. Compare that to a food sensitivity, which is a delayed reaction where you are exposed to something that's causing the sensitivity. You will react over the course of a day to weeks. And the most common signs and symptoms of food sensitivity is gastrointestinal issues like gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea. You may get a skin rash or you may get headaches. A food allergy will cause an immunoglobulin E reaction or IgE reaction, which is basically whenever your immune system comes into contact with the allergen, and we'll call that the antigen, then your immune system will have all these IgE antibodies floating around, and they will hook up to that antigen and they will present that to specific types of white blood cells called mast cells or basophils. And when that happens, those cells will trigger a release of inflammatory things, including histamines, which cause inflammation and cause vascular changes. On the other hand, a food sensitivity reaction involves immunoglobulin G antibodies or IgG antibodies. And in this scenario, whenever an offending food comes into contact with your immune system, IgGs are released and they will coat that offending food molecule, and that sets off a specific cascade called the complement cascade, which is a domino effect, and a very complicated domino effect, which ultimately leads to specific types of immune cells being signaled to come in and find that offending molecule and gobble it up. For food allergies, the most common tests are the skin prick test and a blood test. For the skin prick test, basically they will, either on your back or on your arm, they will stick you with little needles that have parts of whatever foods that they're testing on them, and they will let that sit for about a half hour and observe your skin to see if there's a reaction in there. And based on how severe the reaction is, they can rate on how bad the food allergy is. And the blood test for the food allergy is just a blood test. They draw blood and then they analyze it through the lab, and that tells you if you're making IgE reactions to those foods. To test for food sensitivities, we use something called an IgG ELISA blood test, which is a blood draw. And when the lab analyzes your blood, they basically have a series of little wells that each one of the well has a food antigen in it, and they add a little bit of your blood to each one of those and see how your immune system reacts in each one of those little wells. And from that, they can see the level of reactivity and what things you reacted to. For food allergies, the best thing in my opinion is just avoidance. Avoid the foods, especially if you know that you're gonna get an anaphylactic reaction to that food. You could also use some medications like antihistamines or glucocorticoids or other medications. And there's also something called immunotherapy where they actually give you injections of one of the antigens that you're allergic to in very small doses to see if they could resensitize you to that. For food sensitivities, treatment is the elimination reintroduction diet. So typically you would be tested for the food sensitivities and you would see which foods you are sensitive to, and you would avoid those foods for about a month to see if your symptoms resolve, and if they do, then you could slowly reintroduce the foods through a specific protocol and see if you have a reaction. Now, for food allergies, you may never really recover. You may always be allergic to certain foods, but it could change sometimes too. And you may be not allergic to a certain food, and then years down the road, you become allergic to that food. With food sensitivities, you will probably always be making antibodies to them, but you may not always react to the food. So for example, let's say you had a food sensitivity to gluten and you go through the elimination, you feel better after a month, and then you reintroduce it. You may find that you're able to handle eating gluten maybe 2 or 3 times a week and without having any problems. For more information on food sensitivity testing and how to do an elimination diet, check out some of these other videos I've made on that topic. If you like this video, consider giving it a thumbs up. I thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.